Welcome to the Innovators. Each week, we're serving up real talk with badass women who are dishing out the truth. No fluff, no BS, just raw, honest stories and lessons to inspire and empower the next generation of trailblazing women. We're here to keep it real and pay it forward. I'm your humble host, Cynthia Nelson, three-time entrepreneur, investor, and advisor. I'm really excited to launch this new series with someone I've always considered a kindred badass spirit and someone who is always out of the box. Welcome, Carla Dodds.
Thank you, Cynthia. Thank you so much for having me. It is an honor to be here with you today and part of this amazing podcast.
Thanks so much. Hey, let's go back in time a little bit. I want to understand your background. You've had a various background, a lot of different companies, experiences, industries. How'd you get here?
Well, starting with the fact that I'm from Argentina, I wanted, having always lived in two different worlds, Argentina and the US, growing up in the US, I always aspired to be an ambassador and studied at Southwest Texas State back in the day, now Texas State, to be an ambassador. And yet, when I finished school, I decided to go back home because you required 2 years abroad to actually embark into a master's program. So in that time period of 2 years, I'm doing the market entry for Walmart and Liberty Mutual International into Argentina. And, having always studied to be an ambassador, I found that going into the private sector was like a whole new world, and ambassadorship took on a different role. It took a role within the private sector more than the public sector. Upon completing those 2 years, I came back to the States to do my master's. And even though I dabbled a little bit in the public sector by working at the Inter-American Development Bank, I was quickly recruited by Texas Pacific Group to work in private equity. So going back into, M&As, private equity, even though I was not a deal person, I was very much looking at the intelligence and broad understanding. So my passion's always been about bridging the gap and really understanding cultures. And fast forward, after working for Texas Pacific Group for many years in investor relations and due diligence, I then moved to Texas during probably the worst time of history in 2000 with the economic crisis in LATAM. And my husband was transferred here. And so I said, if I'm not going to get paid anything, I'm going to go and pursue my passion of helping underprivileged children, and took a sabbatical year to do fifth grade bilingual. So thus, tapping into my passion also for education and the importance of what it is to really help others be educated to a certain level to succeed. So quickly thereafter, I went into the energy industry and worked across multiple different aspects, as much as Hispanic marketing, as well as B2B, operational transformation. I did call center transformations, always working with the customers, understanding the psychology behind the customer, my background in consumer behavior really coming to the forefront. And soon enough, I was recruited again by Walmart to create their first ever marketing procurement division, which was an amazing opportunity. By this time, it's 2008. Within a year, our great leader, Stephen Quinn, asked me to take on a new challenge in creating multicultural. And multicultural back then was very new. And it wasn't just about the consumer, it was really about how serving the consumer, but across all the different areas, what you would consider today the DE&I efforts, if you will, or belonging. So within that, great opportunity. That's when you and I met, of course, and great successes across different categories and really connecting with the customers, understanding how we can better serve the customer. And within that same stint at Walmart, eventually was asked to go to Brazil to lead market strategy for Brazil. After that, I decided to take a leap of faith, probably one of the hardest decisions I've ever made in my life, and to go into consulting. Coca-Cola International required for me to have my own consulting entity in order to work for them in Brazil. And the opportunity arose, so I created Nova Mercados. And that's when basically I founded Nova Mercados, started the consulting practice, had never really done consulting, and just took the leap of faith and loved it, absolutely loved it. Worked for Coca-Cola as well as Procter and Gamble, and even the first female IndyCar driver for Brazil, in helping her represent her brand, not only in Brazil, but also internationally. Short after, I was recruited by MasterCard. And that was my big exposure into financial services, which was phenomenal, really focusing on the retailer, which was my retail experience from so many years, in order to develop strategic programs for the retailers from a B2B to C perspective. And in that, it was great. I mean, I had all Latin America, learned so much about the financial services, really helping customers, to graduate from a debit card into a credit card and how we were helping those retailers and creating more access. So as that came about 5 years and based out in Miami, and then I had a personal need as a mom to really move back to Texas so that my son could be closer to his father. And then, therefore, we moved to Texas, and I decided to take on fractional consulting before fractional was even a thing, and became interim CMO for multiple brands such as Curacao Retail, as well as OmniLife across 5 different verticals, which included the sports arena, the sports area, being CMO of Chivas, the largest Mexican soccer team, and really just finding ways to really connect with customers as well as what would be equivalent to franchise owners, which is in the multi-level marketing world. And fast forward, even Peer 1 and helping them with digital strategies during the time that they were around, and then moving forward just on the fractional component in under the Nova Mercados Consulting. So that's given me the opportunity to have flexibility in, raising my son as he went off to college and moving into different roles. And that all led me from the market entry component from the start into all the learnings and the private equity and the financial services to really be able to focus on go-to-market strategies. And that's my strength. So I focus on transformation, go-to-market strategies for companies that are really looking to enter into new realms, go to the next level of growth, and always focused in total growth across all areas. So while it sits mostly in marketing, where the data sits in many cases, there is a lot of overlap and strong collaboration, obviously, with the chief strategy officer, the chief development officer, as well as the CFO, and always a direct line into the CEOs.
Really amazing background. I mean, you've touched so many different industries, really. You haven't stuck in one, which gives you, I think, this kind of very operational view of a business, not very singular, but you can kind of top down and bottom up, and you can find the bodies that are buried really quickly, I'm sure. So what's kind of, a really important or invaluable piece of advice you've been given it? And along the way, you must have had some great mentors. So tell me some great advice first and share. Spill it.
Yeah, I have been extremely blessed to have amazing leaders to report into earlier in my career. The first one well, I mean, there's so many, but from Mark Hartman in private equity, really just supporting me and mentoring me to continue the education platform and getting my MBA and supporting me, as well as many of the other leaders at Texas Pacific Group. But I think there's like 3 key pieces of advice that I've received, and they've actually been from my leaders. The first one is really taking control of my career, that I'm in control, don't expect anyone else to do it, and really try to put some intention and mindful thought to where you want to go next. It doesn't always happen like that, but I always have Daphne, which was my leader at the time, and like I always hear her voice and saying, take control of your own career. What's next?
Nice.
The second one is assume positive intent. So, really, to that fundamental humanitarian in me of really assuming positive intent from others and learning from others as much as possible, which came from my Walmart days with Tony.
Mhm.
And then I think, even though this wasn't really a mentor, but someone I definitely admire in history, and probably because I've been at Walmart 3 different times, because I didn't talk about the third time I went back to Walmart to do their financial services transformation. But really looking at a Sam Walton quote that is, if you want people in the stores to take care of customers, you have to make sure that you're taking care of your people. So really that people centricity, and that is translated to customer centricity. It's taking care of people as a whole. We all live here in a world together, and we can only be better together. So how do we work with other people and their endeavors as well?
That's great. I mean, those are great pieces of advice for sure. I love the taking care of people, and being
Yeah.
being the steward of your own journey as well. Like it is true. No one hands it to you on a plate, and definitely if you're not taking care of it, absolutely no one else is.
And taking care of yourself in the midst of it, right? So, and to your point, like even at OmniLife, the slogan was people that take care of people. So there's always been that underlining thread throughout my career, and that helped really bring it to the forefront of my passion and love to help others and really to work with others. And so as a result, like developing teams, I mean, till this day, I have people that were on my team 20 plus years ago that
Yeah,
still reach out to me and even call me, hey, boss, like I haven't been your boss for 20 plus years, but thanks. That's very humbling. And it's also such a privilege to be able to help out throughout the journeys of so many people.
definitely. Switching gears for just a second. Let's talk about DEI. You mentioned it. There's been a lot of it was a big thing for a while. We've always believed in it, you and I. We know it's important. Companies are kind of pulling back on their DEI initiatives externally, but still saying they're being inclusive. Like, what's your take?
So many things to say about it. So I think first and foremost, to me, it's how are you defining DE&I? And I think that some things have gotten lost in translation about how it's being defined. It seems like different organizations define it different ways, and how they bring it to life and what the action plan is very different because the definition is different, right?
Uh,
I think it's very difficult to really have an opinion on something that has so many different variances per organization. I think for me personally, and because of my journey, where it began is understanding the customer. And for me, that's marketing 101, right? Understand your audience. So, who is the customer? Who are you trying to reach? And then how you reach them and what are all those touch points? So that could be HR, that could be, community relations, government relations. It's what are you doing from a philanthropic standpoint and all the aspects. What are your products relevant? That all ties into it. So personally, I don't really care for the title of DE&I, equity and inclusion. I believe that it's about humanity and we all should be inclusive and address the needs and wants of other individuals and how we're working together. So that's to me like every plan and every organization should be very crystal clear on who is your customer, who are your people, meaning stakeholders throughout your organization. Are they frontline associates? Are they supply chain, corporate, non-corporate, investors? Who are they? And how are you helping all of us succeed together as a whole versus looking at them individually? Yes, there are individual nuances. However, I think that there's going to be an underlining, I guess, war cry, if you will. I'll put it that
yeah,
way. I mean, for
yeah,
Walmart to say money live better, we all know that. So that's the easiest one to assimilate to. So it's how are you helping communities thrive? How are you helping humanity thrive through the different aspects or touch points instead of just trying to put a title on something as DE and I.
yeah. That's a great explanation of it because there's been, like I said, a lot of talk about it, a lot of controversy about it, a lot of thoughts on both sides of the fence. But I like it as the underlying humanity.
Yeah.
Everybody's basically the same. How we talk to you may be slightly different and nuanced. Our creative may be different. Our communications may be different. Where we put our ads in marketing may be different, but again, like you said, save money, live better. It's everybody wants that. It's not a one-stop shop. It's everybody wants that.
Yeah, it's about the well-being, right? So even if I think about it from a health perspective, I mean, sure, there's going to be audiences that are higher in diabetes,
Right,
or are more prone or over-index in different ailments. Well, okay, how are you addressing that?
right, right.
So, and for everyone, not just, obviously you're going to start with the bigger bulk in the sense of like who's the larger percentage where you can drive the
Right,
biggest impact.
right,
However, let's not forget about everybody else and some of those things. You have to have some alternative solutions.
right. Interesting. If you were a CEO, what would you be most worried about today?
don't want to be a CEO. That's I love being a
Okay,
number two
so
to support the CEO.
what should CEOs, what's keeping them up at night, do you think? What's kind of what are they going through? There's a lot of transformation happening, AI, big one on the
Yeah.
list. What are you seeing and what do you think that they should be looking at or worried about or paying more attention to, maybe?
So I think today they're obviously very focused on the economic uncertainty and staying really relevant in a volatile environment with their end user and stakeholder. And primarily, and then obviously, right, laddering up to that is how am I going to meet the financials and make this
Right.
profitable as a whole, right? And so where do I need to cut and so forth. What's interesting is I do see some CEOs that are focused on the people that they have internally and what partnerships they have to really help rather than recreating the wheel or having to staff internally. But I don't see enough focus on that, to be quite frank, at least from where I sit and working with some of the CEOs as well as from the outside. So going back to what I said about like the inspiration from Sam Walton, as well as my experience through helping others and underprivileged, it's how are you working with your people and what do you stand for and who you're trying to reach and how are you supporting the people factor? I think that there's a huge gap today in the talent that are in organizations. I think, and some people have been thrown in seats without the right preparation or support. And just because they don't have the preparation, it doesn't mean you pull them out and fire them. That's not the solution. It's like, how do you get them the tools to succeed in order to help build? And it's more about assessment and spending more time and understanding your people and the people you're serving on the outside as well. So that's in a nutshell. As it relates to AI, that's a whole other conversation and probably requires another podcast. But the reality for me is like, there's a lot of conversation AI taking away jobs. I don't believe that it's necessarily that black and white in taking jobs away. I think it is forcing the evolution of jobs and roles. As it pertains to marketing, which is where I can speak to it the most, I think it's marketing as a whole has evolved so much over the years. It went from full on advertising, like I just saw the movie Fly Me to the Moon, with Tatum Channing and Scarlett Johansson. And it's like, that was what advertising, it was marketing was advertising, the flashy, cool, what's the newest, and look and feel creative. Marketing has evolved into data intelligence, solutioning, scientist, sales alchemist, if you will, role that you need to be wear 20 million different hats, which is what I always say. It's like I get pinned as a marketer, but the reality is I'm more of a strategist. And so it's really understanding the fundamentals of the science and creating the balance. And that's what humanity is also about is balance. And so it's not about AI, but rather the balance of AI with the creatives and the brilliant creatives we have out there. I think marketing has shifted so much to performance marketing
Yeah.
that it has left on the sidelines some of the creativity. So it's getting back to that, some of that balance, if you will. And as it relates to AI, I mean, AI, look at people are driven by emotion, and AI cannot produce emotion. It can imitate emotion, but it cannot replicate emotion. People can replicate emotion, they live emotion. Therefore, you need creatives for that. So I think that there needs to be a balance about how we all work together with the new technology, and it's not like putting it in the
Us versus
corner
them.
of the bad, evil,
Right.
taking away
Right.
jobs. But let's find the balance. Like we spend more time talking about the bad and the good than really finding how does it work together.
Right. I think that's a great perspective on it too, because I find it amazing, invaluable, fun.
I use it every day.
Great, me too. Crazy, interesting.
Saves me a lot of time.
Me too.
And
It's
by the way, it's not like I take it at face value. And sometimes I have to scrap it and start from scratch and do it myself. So it's like, how do you use the tool? Know what the tool is good for, know how to use it. Again, evolving the job skills, right? So
definitely, definitely. So last question. We could go on for a long time, I know,
I'm
for sure.
always
But
scared.
last, so what would you tell an advice that you would give your 20-year-old self now, looking at what's happening, if you're talking to someone who maybe is very junior to you, what would you tell your 20-year-old self about the industries you've been in or about just jobs, careers in general? What's your advice?
I, I mean, I think it's the advice that I've tried to live by and not always great at is listening to my heart and following my intuition, finding that balance between, brain and intuition, if you will, and expanding my network. So my network is the most valuable thing to me ever. And, you and I have talked about this endlessly is the importance of nurturing the network, right? And sometimes we get so bogged down with our brain and things that we need to do that we forget the emotion. And it kind of goes back to the discussion of the balance, right? The balance between AI and the emotion component. Like I can't rely all on tools and all the to-do list. It's that personal interaction with others and learning. Um, I wouldn't give myself the advice of learning because I have done that from the beginning, but I do give that to everybody else is listen and learn as much as you can. And just because it's outside of your comfort zone, that's when you need to push yourself even more to learn and listen. Um, don't discard it and take things at face value. Like, just dig in deeper to higher learnings.
I think that's a great piece of advice. Carla, thank you so much as always. It's great to see your smiling face.
Thank you,
And
Cynthia. Likewise.
if the audience wants to get in touch with you, hire you, work with you, how do they get a hold of you? What's your email?
Uh, well, I just use my personal one. I'm very down to earth that way, but it's carlagd7@gmail and then also through LinkedIn.
Awesome. Carla, thank you so much.
Thank you. Have a wonderful rest of your week. Take care and Happy New Year.